Hey, what's going on, YouTube family? It's just an artist. We're checking in again, and today I want to talk about how I run my real estate numbers. All right, so here's a little spreadsheet that I have been working on for a while. I've been kind of constantly updating for the past couple of years to kind of hone it in, but this is what I use to run numbers. Um, So essentially what we're doing are we're kind of starting with a brief overview is trying to find the ARV, which is the after repair value of a home, and then kind of go through all our costs. So like our renovation costs, our financing costs, and then our exit strategy, how we're going to uh, get out of the deal, either by like selling or refinancing. There's a couple other options too, but we'll kind of focus on those. And then after all that's done, how much do I have invested in the deal and what is my return on investment? So this is kind of your ROI here. So this number is what we're looking for. Generally, 20% is a pretty good number if you're investing in real estate, trying to shoot for, if not more. And then based on your purchase price, once all these things are kind of fixed, you can adjust your purchase price or your offer price to determine what actual number you can give to the buyer, and hopefully y'all can come to terms. So like I said, we're going to start with that ARV value. So that's the value of the home after you have completed all your renovations. Keep in mind, you can either be renovating for selling your home, where you're going to have higher end finishes and maybe some granite and doing vanities and stuff in the bathroom, vice renovating for a rental where you might not do as much. You might just paint the cabinets, vice getting new ones and stuff like that. So that's not really the point of this video, but just understand that. Here's a quick way that you can get an ARV by just going to Zillow. You want to make sure you click on the sold tab and then put in, the bedrooms, bathrooms, just houses, and then any other fields. So like I usually try to go at a specific square footage. And then one of the big things is when did the property sell? So typically I like to do past 3 to 6 months to kind of only get the most recent homes that have sold. Another quick thing is I like to try to stay within a neighborhood. So this is in the area I am in. So I kind of know this neighborhood. So I just kind of circled around it. And so in this case, I have 6 homes that have sold that meet my criteria. Now I can try to pick what the best 3 homes are that is closest to the final product of what my subject property is going to be. So just kind of looking through these different pictures and pick the best 3 that are have the same type of finishes that you plan on doing. And once you do that, you can get an average price per square foot. So divide each price divided by the square footage that home. Do that for your 3, and then average that number together, and that'll give you a average price per square foot. You can multiply that by the square footage of your subject property, and that'll give you a pretty good value of what your after repair value will be. So the next thing you want to do is figure out your renovation costs. So keep in mind, if you will go back and watch some past videos on the different ways you can make money in real estate, I think a forced appreciation is the best way to invest in real estate. So that's kind of what these numbers are. It is a forced appreciation deal. So we're going to have some type of rehab costs and whatnot. And this can be like for land developing, you're just thinking of like putting in septics, the cost of a new home or mobile home if you're doing that, well, bringing in water, clearing the land, all that type of stuff. But in this case, we're kind of doing like a home example. So we're going to be thinking of, does it need a new roof? What's the HVAC? We got to paint, flooring, sheetrock, kitchen, bathrooms, all that type of stuff. So as far as rehab costs, it's just going to kind of vary area to area. So I recommend just getting contractors and bringing them to the house and have them give you bids, try to get multiple bids for everything so you can make sure you're getting the best price. And maybe even just have like general contractors give you a bid on the whole thing. And then just compare as many as you can. And just going to kind of take experience of doing it a couple of times so you can get more familiar with the numbers, but definitely a lot of upfront work when you're initially getting started to hone in on a rehab cost. Just of note, all these numbers are just arbitrary. I just kind of threw them in for this example, but yeah. So that's your renovating. The next thing you want to do is determine your financing. So there's 2 different main types of financing when you're investing in this way. So you can do like a conventional loan, but the issue with that is that the lenders are going to look at you specifically, so they're going to run your credit, look at your debt to income. You're also going to be required to put down that 20% down payment, and the house is going to have to be more of a livable home. So it's going to have to, it can't be totally gutted and whatnot. It's going to have to be some kind of working home. So when the inspector comes and stuff like that, because you're going to have to meet all the Fannie and Freddie guidelines if you're going that route. So that's the downside of it. The better side of it, you're going to have a better interest rate, and your monthly cost might be a little lower compared to a hard money lender. A hard money lender is going to basically, they are specific lenders that are looking for to give money to investors to go invest in real estate, and then they just kind of make money from giving a investor money. So they typically do 11, 12% these days, interest only payments. And they look more at the property itself. So they might still run your credit just to kind of see where you're at, but they're mostly going to look at the house and is it a good deal? So that's a good thing about them, is that they come behind you and run numbers so you can ensure you're getting a good deal. And then also your experience level. So if you don't have any experience, you might have to try to bring in a partner that does for your first one or whatever. And then once you kind of get some experience, you can kind of get these access to hard money lenders money on your own, I guess. So going down the list here, you have the purchase price, which we said we're going to adjust based on ROI once we kind of get to the end and get all the numbers in. Rehab costs, this ARV number. It's two different ones, so I can kind of have them separate for when I run numbers down further, but don't worry about that too much. This number is just the hard money loan amount. So typically a hard money lender will give you 70% of the after repair value. So that's why I have this loan to value for the renovation loan or hard money loan, whatever, 0.7. So it's typically 70% of the ARV. So that's where that 210 comes from. These money invested. So these two numbers are the money invested before you refinance and the money invested after. So we can kind of come back to that later. And again, like I was saying, this is kind of like a working document. It's definitely not laid out in the best way, but because I've been working on this for essentially years, so things are kind of all over the place. So just excuse that. Okay, so these things are just how I change the loan products for like refi. This is your refinance loan number of months, so 360 months, so like a 30-year loan. What's your refinance interest rate? So depending on what the market interest rates are at the time. Renovation loan interest rate, so that's the hard money loan interest rate. Like I said, typically 11%. This is just a number that Excel needs to calculate the principal and interest like a 30-year loan. And then it spits out a formula for what your principal and interest would be for a 30-year loan at 7% at a $300,000 value. And then this is what your monthly payments will be for a rental loan. This is a little simpler. Basically just take the ARV times the 0.7, because that's what they'll lend. So 210,000 times 0.11. So you get your 11%, and then divide that by 12, and that'll be what your monthly payment is for that. These two variables are just, this basically tells us the starting month and the end month. So like for my hard money loan interest, the amount of interest we pay over the life of the loan, put in here 3 months. So it's basically just this 1925 times 3, because we made 3 monthly payments. So that's how I keep track of how much interest I actually paid to the hard money lender, depending on how long we expect to hold the property. Then you have some rent stuff, which we'll get into when we talk about refinance, if we're going to go that route. Again, another good thing to keep track of is your holding costs. So that's going to be, let's see, C19 and C20. So you can expect what your taxes and what your insurance will be. So for insurance, you're just going to have to call and get quotes and kind of figure out in general what you might pay for insurance. And then for your taxes, I think I've showed you all this before, but my county specifically, I'm sure your county probably has something similar. You can put in a tax estimator, so your property value, and then your real property. So this is the investment one, and then you calculate, and that'll tell you how much taxes they're gonna charge you for the next year estimating. And so it's not gonna be exact. Anyways, so that's how I determine my taxes. So that's about it for financing. Now we're gonna get into our exit strategy. The two main ones are either selling your property or keeping it as a rental and refinancing it. So if you sell, the major things that you want to think about are your closing costs. So that's kind of what we have here. Closing costs. That's a refinance. So it'd be a little more if it's a closing, like an actual closing, but I have this set up as for like a refinance rent kind of bird situation. But I would just change this number to what it would be if it was actually a full-on closing. Typically about 2 to 3% of the home price. So at $300,000, like in this case, 3 or 2% of that would be about $6,000. So that's about what you can expect for closing costs. You also want to consider your holding costs, which you kind of already talked about, for the amount of months that you're going to have it, tax and insurance and whatever other holding costs you might have. Your realtor fees. So that's kind of controversial, I know, right now as of July 26, 2024, with how that's going to settle out. But typically it's been 5 to 6% of the purchase or the sale price of the home. So on $300,000 home, 5%, that's about that's about $15,000 if you're paying the buyer and the seller agents 2.5% each. So yeah, that's what that is. Let's see. Other costs is going to be your capital gains, which a lot of people don't think about. So say you have your purchase price, your rehab costs, the hard money loan interest paid, the holding costs, and the closing costs and everything when you sell. Then you have like your net profit made. It's going to be, so say that's $100,000. Whenever you go do your taxes that next year, you're going to have to submit all those documents to the IRS. And this is just a federal. State kind of depends on whatever state you're in. You might not pay state taxes, and capital gains rate that's a state level. Could be different. Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm from Texas, so we don't pay state taxes, so I'm not that familiar. But anyways, for federal at least, it's going to be 22%. Well, really what it is, it's your capital gains are taxed at your normal tax rate bracket, which is generally 22% for most people. If you make a lot of money, you're going to be even in a higher tax bracket up to like the 37 one I think it goes up to for like people that make a lot of money. And then so in that case, if you make $100,000, you're paying $37,000 to the IRS. But in most people's cases, like my case, if I make $100,000, paying $22,000 to the IRS. I guess of note, if you hold that property for a year and then you sell it, so like you sell it on a year and one day you go down to a 15% capital gain tax rate. So if you make 100,000, you're paying them 15. So there is that. But typically it's not worth it to try to wait for a year to sell because you want to just try to keep recycling that money to make more money. And your holding costs are probably your holding costs for those extra months you have to hold it are probably going to be more than the money you save at a lower tax rate anyway. So consider that. So then, yeah, once you account for all those things, that's going to be your profit if you sold. So in this case, it'd be like $28,000 once you account for all those things. Then notice here it goes up a pretty good amount here just because now we're getting into going to that 15% tax rate. Anyways, so that's if you sell. Now, if you rent, you got some more numbers that you're going to need to consider. So you're going to have to figure out what you expect the house to rent for and whatever area it's in. So you can do that the same way as you do for finding the ARV. You just go to listings that have rented and try to stay within the subdivision because like I was saying earlier, housing prices can vary and rent prices can vary drastically subdivision to subdivision. So I want to try to make sure that I stay within the subdivision if I can, and then stay in the subdivision and look at the most recent ones. And then I was going to say one more thing, which is I'll also look at the time on market. So if something rented for $2,500, but it took you 3 months to do it, well, then maybe you should assume a little bit of a lower number. So because you don't want to wait 3 months paying your mortgage payment for 3 months, waiting on a renter to get in there. And then that kind of reminded me of another thing when you're running these numbers, what you want to do, because typically a lot of these things are going to be ranges. So like here we're talking about the ARV is $300,000, but really it might be the ARV is anywhere from $280,000 to $320,000. So when you're running your numbers, and I'll just say like $300,000 like to $340,000 in this case. So what you really want to do is choose the most conservative number. So that's why we chose like 300,000 in this case, because maybe this house can sell for 340 in perfect conditions, perfect market conditions, but we'll assume 300 because that's more conservative. For the rent, say the rent range is anywhere from 25 to 2,700 bucks, so we're going to assume 25. I'm going to assume worst case taxes, worst case like the highest insurance quote you got. So just to be conservative in your numbers, so that way you're always assuming worst case scenario, and then if you happen to get the higher rent value or the appraisal comes in a little higher or whatever, then that's just kind of like extra. You don't want to run your numbers based on best case scenarios, and then more than likely something's not going to come back right, and then you're going to be not hit the numbers that you expected to hit. So just FYI for when you're running numbers. Okay, so now we're talking about if we're going to refinance and rent the property. So we're talking about how you find the rent, which we just talked about. We already showed you how you get the taxes, insurance. You want to make sure you account for your property manager fees. So it's zero for us because we manage our own properties, but if you have a property manager, you want to make sure you do that. Typically, it's about 8 to 10% of the rent value that they charge. And then this maintenance fee is something we do. Most people do this as well. It's just putting away a little money each month so you can fix those little things that come up if you gotta, go and fix a light or something, or the door handle broke or something, or if the roof needs to be fixed. You've kind of been renting for a while and you've been saving 50 bucks every month. It makes that a little easier to handle if you've been already kind of putting money away. So budget for that as well. And then once you get all those numbers, basically what you want to do. So this is my yearly cash flow in this case. Once I refinance my loan, my yearly cash flow. So what I do is I do 11.33 times C18, which is the rent. And I do that so that I can be more conservative again. So you have to assume 4 vacancies. So your house is going to be rented every single day of every single year. And the area I'm in is a pretty strong rental market, and we can typically rent homes in 2 to 3 weeks. So I use 11.33, but if it takes longer than that, then you can use 11, 10.5, whatever you want to do to be as conservative as you want. And then I always use 12 for all my expenses, right? Because your monthly payment, your taxes, your insurance, all that stuff is going to be coming every month, no matter if you have a tenant in there or not. So this also builds in a little more conservatism. So then that gets me my yearly cash flow. And now when I take my yearly cash flow divided by my money invested in the deal, I get a return on investment. So that's what this is. Basically this number divided by this number times 100 to get to a percentage, and then that gives me 20%. So that's kind of what this is showing. So now we can kind of talk about these numbers. We skipped over them earlier. So this money invested before you refinance is how much of your own money is going into the deal. So you get some money from the hard money lender, but then like the rehab cost and the interest paid and the holding costs and all that stuff is going to add up, and that's about how much money you're going to have to bring to the table, make the deal happen before you refinance. And then money invested after you refinance, you can see it's much lower. So that is the benefit of a value add project, is that you are essentially creating value, right? So you bought this property at 148, put in 75, and now it's worth 300,000. So you created whatever that difference is in of money and equity that a bank is willing to lend or give you money to lend towards. And now you can use that to basically offset some of your expenses and pull your money out. And after you do all that, what you're left with of your own money in the deal is a lot less. So it's 12,675 bucks. So now what that's going to do is it's going to drastically increase your return on investment. So now you're at 20%. And so like I was saying earlier, now that you have all these costs are fixed, you can now say, because originally I had this at 150 just as a starting point for when we were like looking at a property and say, hey, we want to offer 150. Well, you can see that gives you 17.46% return on investment. But let's say in this case, you wanted to make at least 25% return on investment. So let's try 147. All right, that's 21.24. Right, so that's 26.48. So now you know if you offer 145 and all these numbers stay the same, now your return on investment is going to be 26.5% return on investment, which is pretty good. So That's the benefit of having like a Excel spreadsheet like this that you can kind of change the numbers and it'll rerun all the equations and spit back out your return on investment. So I'll definitely look at trying to do something like this if you can, if you have the time. Um, any other things that I didn't talk about? So this refinance loan to value, I think I might have talked about this, but essentially a bank will lend you 75% of the after repair value. So in this case, it's $300,000. So a bank will lend you, what's that, $225,000. So that's 75% of the 300,000. And then that other 25% is basically going to be like the down payment. Uh, so yeah, so basically you're using the equity or the money that you created essentially as the down payment, and pulling out the money that you actually put in the deal, or as much of it as you can, to minimize the amount of your own money you have invested in the deal. We talked about holding costs, total closing costs, hard money loan. So um, basically hard money loans, they have a lot of fees associated with them. That's how they make a lot of their money as well. So typically there'll be a 1% origination fee. So that's where this 1% comes from. And then this is the actual origination fee. So that's just like 1% of the total value of the loan. So in this case, it was $210,000. You can see up here, hard money loan, loan amount. So 1%, so that's $2,100. You just happen to pay them because they're giving you this money plus all their other closing costs. So then you get a total closing cost of hard money loan. So that's how I kind of account for that. Closing costs on the refinance is typically about $2,500. So that's what I have here. And a lot of these numbers are just like, because I have what all these things will be like: cash flow, taxation, depreciation, rent, what they'll be over the course of 30 years. And then I made some graphs down here, but I don't need to really show you all of that. I was just trying to get fancy, but this is what I have just as like market appreciation in general over the next 30 years will be about 2.5%. This is the tax rate that I was using for like the capital gains, so 0.22. So whenever I did my calculate the profit if sold scenario, this is just how I expect my expenses to go up. So like in other videos, when I'm talking about like your taxes and your insurance will kind of go up every year. This kind of accounts for that over the 30 years here. Rent increase. So what do you expect to increase your rent over? So just like 1.5% every year. So typically we'll do like 3% every 2 years. So then that's why I put the 1.5% every year, just kind of average it out. Selling fees. So this is what I was talking about with like whenever you sell, you can expect to go about 5% of the loan, the sale price, and fees and regulatory fees and closing costs, all that stuff. And this is that long-term capital gain rate, which is why this is a difference here, such a big difference in like that one initially, because you're going down to less you paying in capital gains. It's my property manager variable, so it's 0 because like I said, we manage our own properties. This is the loan to value for the renovation loan or the hard money loan. So like I said, typically they'll give you 70% of the ARV of the house. And then, yeah, we already kind of talked about these. So yeah, so that is how I run my numbers. Kind of involved. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out and let me know. I can try to answer specific questions and make another video if a lot of people have the same question to try and clarify things for y'all. But yeah, getting something like this will be really good for you. So because you really need to understand the numbers before you buy any deal. That's like the bread and butter of being an investor, knowing if something's going to be a good deal or not. So if you like this content, please like and subscribe. That really does help out the channel. Make sure you go watch past videos where I kind of break down some of the things that I was talking about in more detail in other videos. And then make sure you check out the little series I had on the land development project that we did. We closed on that a couple days ago and did pretty well on that. So go check out the numbers for that, which I posted last week. And then also kind of there's some videos on when we actually were putting in the septic and working on the mobile home and stuff like that. So definitely go check that out. But after that, I'm signing off. Thanks for watching. Again, like and subscribe, comment, and I'll see y'all on the next one.